The Racing Pod
on Off the Ball
with William Hill. Best odds guaranteed on all Irish and UK racing. 18 plus. See GamblingCare.ie.
Welcome along to the Racing Pod. It is Will O'Callaghan standing in for John Duggan. We've also got Johnny Ward away this week, so the tremendous Thom Malone is with us. Tom, how are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm good, Will. It's a great week to be called off the subs bench, to be fair.
It is, isn't it? I mean, look, this week is set up wonderfully ahead of Saturday. So we've got Cork Rambler coming back, heading up the field. We've got a shorter field of just 34 this time round for the 176th renewal at Aintree. We got 26 Irish trained horses, many of them among the favourites going into it. We've got the Irish Grand National Hero and I Am Maximus running in this as well. You've got the other Willie Mullins, Big Hope in Meeting of the Waters. We've got potentially just inside the field in Kitty's Light, the Scottish national winner, hopefully from their perspective becoming the first Welsh winner since 1905. We've got a ground that's probably going to be quite heavy, Tom, as well. We've got plenty of interesting stories getting intertwined as we head into Saturday.
Yeah, maybe just take one of the softest ones from the top. I think the Kitty's Light story would just be absolutely magnificent. Christian Williams, he was a jockey. He rode for Paul Nicholls back in the day, and now he's a trainer, but he trains kind of on the beach in Wales. He doesn't have, like, you know, you go to a press day and you go to the likes of Gordon Elliott or whatever, and they've all these amazing custom-made gallops, and they, this one's fibre, and this one's carpet, and this one's sand mix, and all this amazing, technical stuff you have. And then Christian Williams trains on a beach, and he also has this kind of pathway he's fashioned basically through a forest and the moors that he canters the horses down as well. It's the most it's beautiful because it's just a natural setup. He just canters them on the beach and through the forest and around up the hills and dales and that sort of thing. But also his daughter, he's a 5-year-old daughter who was diagnosed with leukemia last year, and it looks like she is recovering, which is great. And Kitty's Light is her favourite horse. So, I mean, even just looking through his Instagram and stuff like that in the last few weeks has been magic. So, yeah, if Christian Williams wins with Kitty's Light, there will not be a dry eye in the house, I guarantee that much.
We'll talk about your top tips a bit later on in the podcast, but the conditions, Tom, seem to be drying out a little bit as we talk at the moment, and the weather forecast, crucially for tomorrow, is to be reasonably dry. It's kind of been on the heavier side of soft all week. I assume we're still looking at reasonably soft ground once the National goes to post tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, yesterday they called it heavy soft in places on the National course, but actually when you watch the race in itself, it seemed to ride a lot better than maybe the description was. I mean, maybe we're all thinking back to Cheltenham and they were too positive the other way. I mean, they called it soft early on and then immediately had to change it to heavy, because it was so clear. But Aintree have done an incredible job. The place looked an absolute picture yesterday. And the slight concern, I suppose, with no rain is that when you get ground that goes from heavy and dries out, it can get a little holding, and that actually makes it harder for horses without the rain, because it's just more difficult for them to pull themselves out of. But yeah, look, it will be tough going, there's no doubt about that, but probably not as bad as maybe when I was looking through this race on Tuesday and making a few notes, thinking, it's going to be an almighty slog. It is still going to be a slog, because obviously it's the Grand National, it's 4.5 miles. But it's certainly not going to be as heavy as it looked like it was going to be early on in the week, and certainly not like the ground we've seen over here in Ireland for the last, couple of months or so. Yeah,
look, I felt like it hasn't stopped raining here for a long time. I see even Limerick is off for tomorrow as a result of just the barrage of rain that we've had over the last while as well. As I mentioned at the top, the field comes down to 34 this time round. The race is going to post a little bit earlier than last season. And I guess all of this, including the standing start for Saturday as well, is to try and not have a repeat of the scenes of last year.
Yeah. Look, there were a lot of factors last year as well. Obviously, we had the Animal Rising protests. I don't think they'll happen again. And that just seemed to put everyone on edge for the entire day. So obviously, the changes that have come in, we have a reduced field. That's obvious. Look, if you have fewer horses, you'll have fewer fallers. There's more space. That's a positive. Some people are slightly worried about it. How far are we taking the race back? But, 34 horses is plenty. There's been obviously that standing start. The reason for that is that last year in particular, I mean, I think they were cantering about 30 or 40 yards before the start line. So they were absolutely charging at the first. You see the likes of Coco Beach in particular. I mean, he got wide right and he was sort of 3-4 lengths clear. But he winged it, but he was going way too fast. And, if one horse goes, they're pack animals, they'll all follow. So the standing start, while it might be difficult in practical terms, is definitely a positive. The first fence has been brought forward as well. Again, 60 yards closer, that's a good thing. Obviously, that will mean they can't get up that head of steam. Also, there's a couple of other little tweaks. One of the fences have been reduced in height. The worst horse in the race now it doesn't actually apply this year, but in theory, in future races, will be far better than in the past. So the cut-off before used to be 125, is now 130. Look, it's not going to be that for this year. It's much higher than that. But, again, there's still a... they've raised the caliber of horse that gets in. There's other aspects as well. They're not allowing the horse to be led on. They have to be released and canter in front of the grandstands. So there's all sorts of bits and pieces like that. There's also a change in the drop height in one of the fences as well. So the horses, when they come over it, they're landing on a more level surface rather than coming down. And obviously, you just think of it, momentum. They're going to flip over. They're not going to flip over, obviously, but it's just an easier landing side. So Aintree have done an enormous amount of work. I think it's a 5-year trial. They'll look back on this and see what the data says. But overall, it's a much safer race. The faller rate has come down massively in the last few years, particularly since 2012 when they made those initial changes. So I'd say it wouldn't want to make too many more changes, but it will certainly make for a safer race and hopefully a better spectacle and everyone coming home safe and sound.
Yeah, I guess we have to see how these tweaks play out. Does it significantly change the race? I mean, everything that you've just mentioned there to me sounds like sensible decisions to make sure we don't have a load of horses, say, particularly going really hard at the first, where you kind of traditionally have fallers, particularly at the first. And if they're going at a slower speed, that has to be a good thing for safety, you would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And the incident at the first last year, I think a horse was lost at the first last year. And he just never, when you look back at the race, he just never took off, just straight into it, just because they were going too fast. And it was clear last year because of everything that happened last year and the delay and the protests, everything was clearly on edge. The horses were sent out, sent back in. So there was no calm flow to the day. And they kind of still seemed they want to go through sort of, pre-planned procedures like parades and stuff like that, when they shouldn't have done that. They should have sent the horses down to the start, find a quiet area for them, and let them get as relaxed as possible. What's happened here is obviously learnings from that. And like I say, a lot of these are very sensible changes. Not allowing them to charge at the first in a race that's 4.5 miles long, that makes an enormous amount of sense. It will be difficult for jockeys now. Horses are used to just walking in or jig-jogging in or trotting in and jumping off. So it will be a test for the jockeys. But look, it's the biggest stage. It's the biggest race. They're professional jockeys. Well, the vast majority of them are anyway. They should be able to get a horse to stand still for a stride and a half just to get them away.
Okay, before we take a look at the horses to watch out for, and you're going to do your horse-by-horse guide on the members section of the pod as well, tell me what's been your favourite renewal so far. I'm not old enough to watch Red Rum. I've only ever seen those races on the newsreels and what's used in the footage that is used ahead of the Grand National itself. For me, probably the one that stands out is Tiger Roll's second run in 2019, at the Battle in 2018, but so impressive in 19, denied ultimately of the chance of emulating Red Rum because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But for me, 19 really stands out. What's your favourite Grand National, Tom?
19 stands out massively for me as well. 20, I was scheduled to go over with Off the Ball in 2020 to cover what was should have been what we were all hoping was going to be the hat-trick bid. 2021 was pretty exceptional as well. That genuinely had me in tears, just with Rachel Blackmore and Manila Times, just the significance of that moment. But personally, there are two that really stand out, and I'm going way back in time here. One is Mr. Frisk, because my dad was there and brought me back a race card, and I was a child now, an absolute child. So I think it was 92 or 93. And then in 99, I was a teenager, and Bobby Joe won it for Paul Carberry and Tommy Carberry, and there were enormous scenes of celebration. And I remember just at the time, because in the late 90s, early 2000s, even winning any sort of race in the UK was huge for Irish racing. I just remember thinking, well, because Bobby Joe had won the Irish National the previous year, and then he went and did it. And it was just a really good time for smaller Irish trainers who really had a great time, because Bobby Joe did it in 98, Papillon did it in 2000, then Ted had Comanche Court who did the Irish Grand Nationals. Just remember at that time thinking, oh my God, it's brilliant. We have all these horses. We're just, Ireland are going to dominate. And then, it didn't really happen for another while again. But it really felt like a time when I just grew up. No, English horses just always won the national. And for Bobby Joe to do it, I think he was the first since Tommy had actually won it in Lescar Go. So it was a huge moment for kind of Irish racing. I just remember the celebrations. Paul Carberry was my favourite jockey when I was younger as well. And to see him do it on Bobby Joe was magic. And I live quite near to Fairyhouse now, and people still talk about the celebrations in 24, 25 years ago.
Yeah, no, I did a piece with Nina Carberry and Brian Driscoll last year, and we were up in the Bobby Joe suite watching it. So naturally, obviously, the question was going to come around the Carberries, and she was just saying, it's like horse of a generation. It's even when you've had all the success that they had as a family, Bobby Joe is still the horse that mattered so much to them because of, as you say, those two special occasions, winning the national either side of the IRC.
Yeah, and like, obviously I follow racing every day of the week, but there are so few days when, you get those texts from people. What do you think will win this? You get them for the Cheltenham and the Grand National, really. They're the two when people are haranguing you a bit. And, it's just such a special race. It just catches the imagination. It's the grannies and that having their 50p each way on whatever they want to have it in the Grand National, because they pick a name and then they watch it on TV, and it's always been on the Sports Saturday or Grandstand or whatever you grew up watching of a Saturday. So it was just it's just a magic race that really captures the public imagination. And you can't help but feel that the changes that have been made, racing are just trying to make sure they can hold on to that place in people's imagination, to make sure it is a great spectacle still and not something worse.
Yeah, they're the worst type of people, Tom, by the way, those who don't text you all year and then the day before Cheltenham, it's the Monday at Cheltenham week, what are your fancies for Tuesday, Tom?
What do you fancy? I know, yeah. There's a few of them.
I bet.
Definitely not Tommy Rooney.
Right, so Cork Rambler goes back to try and go back-to-back. First in Tiger Roll would be achievement if he's to do so. Obviously, you'd be looking at Red Rum back in the 70s, having won back-to-backs as well. So he's currently 5-1 with the bookmakers. Give me an argument for a back-to-back here, Tom.
There are plenty of really good arguments for a back-to-back. Cork Rambler is he's 10, so he's kind of a sort of an ideal age to go and replicate it. You look at the profile of Grand National, okay, maybe he's just 10, so he's maybe on the top side now. We're sort of seeing 7, 8, 9-year-olds winning, obviously. The way he won last year was incredibly impressive. His preparation, yes, he was third in a Gold Cup. You'd be worried, would that leave a mark on him? But by the sounds of things, and this is quite a brave strategy, but Lucinda Russell, she said the Gold Cup was his prep run. So, and to go and finish third in the Gold Cup in a prep run, and Peter Scudamore apparently rode him then the week after the Gold Cup and said he felt better than ever. So the vibes in the yard are very strong. He won so well last year. He's always been a quirky horse. And the thing about, people say, the Grand National and jumping, and you need a big horse to jump. Like, you don't anymore. Like Tiger Roll is 15 hands tops. He's a small, compact, clever little horse. And like Cork Rambler, sort of before he won his Grand National, would kind of had a bit of a squiggle beside him. People thinking, he's got a bit of a temperament issue. He's got a bit of a funny head carriage. He no doubt he keeps a little bit for himself, Cork Rambler. But I think he's just one of those clever horses that realizes he doesn't have to do too much. He could have won. I think he could have won last year by 25 lengths if he wanted. Like the winning distance for Vanillier, flattered Vanillier, it was just Cork Rambler pulling up. I don't think he was empty or anything like it. He's just one of those horses. He's done it all the time that he can. As soon as he sees a bit of wide open space, he'll just realise he's done enough, and he'll kind of stop. Because you look at Derek Fox's body language throughout, and Derek Fox is not one of those riders. He's not a Paul Carberry. He's not a sit there motionless, even if he's holding on to nothing. He's a kind of a rider that nudges and uses his legs and uses his hands plenty. And, he does encourage his horses, and you'll see him move about in the saddle a bit. He was super still. He couldn't hold him, and he just turned absolutely swinging. So I think there's, yes, obviously he's up plenty for last year's win, but there's lots of good arguments for Cork Rambler. And, you know, Noble Yates is 11 stone 12. Cork Rambler 11.6. Of the two previous winners, you know, just Cork Rambler is so much more attractive. Just those £6, I think, is you know, and obviously as soon as he pulled up last year, you can't help but think connections are going, we'll have another go at this next year.
Yeah, so nobody else carrying top weight around after the declarations yesterday. The JP McManus horses, and look, you mentioned the wonderful story that was Manila Times a few years ago, and of course AP's first win with Don't Push It back in 2010. So JP has got you know, plenty of heritage in this race. This time round, we've had jockey decisions to be made beforehand. Now, I saw JP on the ITV Racing yesterday say he's got a few quid himself on Limerick Lace at 25-1 within the race. But Mark Walsh has made the decision to go on Limerick Lace this time round, and Paul Townend is going to be on the Irish champion Iron Maximus.
Yeah, and then you got like Meeting of the Waters as well. He had a really nice prep, you know, and you like, look, Janet Hill and Capitano, I can't have the pair. Just looking at the JP runners, I love Iron Maximus, I gotta say. He's got the Bobby Joe profile. He's technically £5 well in since the weights came out. You know, he's a great, like, obviously he won the Irish Grand National last year. Then he used a quirk in the calendar to win a Grade 1 novice chase back at Fairyhouse, won the Bobby Joe at Fairyhouse. I saw some negatives about his jumping, but the horse has never had an issue jumping. It's actually, I think, Iron Maximus is a little bit like Cork Rambler in that he's a little bit, I think Ruby Walsh described him as a monkey. He's a bit of a character. Like the way he won the Irish Grand National last year was probably the National Hunt Ride of the season by Paul Townend, when he dropped him right out the back and picked his way through the field and won at the end. Limerick Lace is well in too. She's about £6 well in. She's looking to become the first mare to win this thing since 1951. Of the Jake McManus winners, I think Iron Maximus has the best chance. And I think Paul Townend was probably always going to ride him. I don't know if Mark had a chance to pick him up. So, but I know Mark is first jockey, but I would say that Iron Maximus is the best of the JP chances, and I think he's a brilliant chance. The people have crabbed his jumping style, but again, I think he's another horse who's a little bit clever. And people will say a good jumping style is to be kind of exuberant and clearing your fences. Like in the Grand National, I prefer them to rub the belly through them and be as efficient as possible and land. You know what I mean? Yes, Iron Maximus will take a little chance, but I think it's actually his action rather than his jumping style, as in the way he runs. I imagine he's not the kind of horse that would be one that they sort of loved at the sales, because he just has a funny old kind of action on him. Yeah, look, he was only 26 grand when they picked him up as a young horse. So yeah, he obviously wasn't a looker at the sales, but it's the engine, not the looks, that's important, and that's what Iron Maximus has in spades.
Yeah, Paul Townend, you've mentioned. We have to talk about the end of the Aintree hurdle yesterday. Plenty of controversy, and people have probably seen it at this stage. The entire stewards' inquiry is up there in video, so you get to see Rachel Blackmore making her argument. You get to see Paul Townend defending his. This is quite an interesting watch.
Yeah, I mean the notion that a jockey is ever going to say no. Yeah, I definitely got that wrong, didn't I? In a steward's inquiry for a Grade 1. I think the rules probably the rules in Britain probably helped here. In Ireland, he probably still would have kept the race well, but in France, I imagine Imperi Pass would have been demoted to third, and Dan Skelton's horse Langer Dan might have been moved up to first, because it seemed like Langer Dan was impeded. Like it looked like his nose actually hit off the horse's rear when he crossed over him. Obviously, Tennant will say he had all the momentum and he's going forward. But yeah, it is very interesting to hear what the jockey's perspective of things are. And I often wonder when they're telling their story, how straight a face they're able to keep, because obviously when you see it on video, it's probably not the same as it would have felt. I'm sure Paul Townend felt like he was out and well past Langer Dan, because he just had all the momentum, and it's probably fair that he won the race. But Imperi Pass is one of those horses as well that, you know, he can pull up in front. He's definitely is a little bit tricky. We saw that in the Champion Hurdle. But yeah, It was interesting. I certainly, when I saw Stewart's inquiry called, I was like, one pair of passes in trouble here.
Like Langerdan becomes the meat and the sandwich here in a way. And Rachel Blackmore made a reasonable point when she said, let's go back and just have a quick look at the second last. Here's the point where the drift actually happens and my natural racing line gets seriously impaired. So she's saying that almost she's having to battle, whatever coming over the last and that kind of final turn for home. She felt from that point, the drifting across was actually a big problem.
Yeah, and the thing with Bob Ollinger would be more of a stamina horse. So she obviously felt she had to go and get rolling early. So you could see where she got into her position there, and she was just looking to do that kind of catapult off the turn and get your, take that sort of the outside line. And as she mentioned, that scrimmaging at the second last was what impeded her and didn't let her really get rolling late on. But yeah, they're always gonna. You're fighting for every look. You're fighting for every inch in a race, and when you're given a second chance, you're certainly going to look for it as well in the stewards, aren't you?
I would think as well, a very popular winner from this week, when we look back even over the 3 days, is going to be Sergino getting that win for Nicky Henderson, because your heart kind of went out to Nicky with everything that happened ahead of Cheltenham, because Nicky looks at Cheltenham, looks at Aintree particularly as his two big moments in the season. Cheltenham was a disaster because of the factors around so many horses having to be pulled out, but that was a crucial win.
Absolutely, and it is no doubt it's good for the sport. And look, it was unfortunate Shishkin didn't maybe run his race, but I think Shishkin's race is the King George again next year if he comes back. But Sergino's a very exciting horse. The negative for me would be the way he jumped. Intrigued to see what happens with him next year. Would he just consider going novice chasing straight away? He just seems a little disrespectful at his hurdles. My goodness, his engine is all there. Cortese ran a fine race, but yeah, for Nicky Henderson, as you say, like he lets his horses start out slow. I mean, think of all the great 2 mile chases he had, and he's hardly ever targeted Tingle Creek at the start of December because he's just built so much towards the Christmas and spring campaign with them. And then for things to go wrong just in the immediate build up to Cheltenham is an absolute disaster. So great for him. I'd say he needed it just for the last, 8 weeks or whatever he'd had, because even in the run up to Cheltenham, obviously the horses were sick, so he just wasn't getting results at all. And then, to go and, give Declade your horses, your owners are there, and then he said, no, look, sorry, they're just not firing. To have to wait, like it's such a tricky situation. You want to wait to give them every single chance just in case, and then, to be brave enough to go and say, no, look, we pulled stumps on all of these, and then go and great for him that Sergino bounced back, and he is a really exciting horse for next year. And obviously, then we'll be back to seeing Constitution Hill. Hopefully, he recovers from his colic issue as well.
Yeah, forgive me now. I'm going to be like the person on a Saturday morning who sends you a text to say, I'm going out to the bookies to put a few quid each way in a horse for the Grand National. This is Tom's top tips for the Grand National. We will go horse by horse on the members pod as well for OTB members. But you're looking at spreading a few quid for tomorrow, Tom. Where are you going?
How many selections are you giving me?
How many do you want? I mean,
we'll do it. We might do a countdown. Maybe one from the top, one from the middle, and one from the bottom, or something like that.
I like your thinking.
Right. Look, those are the top. I really like I Maximus. I think he's the perfect profile. He's the right age. He'll handle the ground. His trainer's bang in form. His jockey is riding out of his skin at the moment. I think he'll be super clever. And he's £5 well in. He's on with Jake McManus. There's so much to like about him. So I'm Maximus there. He's got 11 stone 6 at the top. Sort of for the middle then, there's a few in around there, the likes of Malamission, Delta Work, those kind of horses. I think maybe Delta Work could outrun his odds, although I've seen Jack Kennedy's taken him, so he has been backed into around 16-1 from 25-1. So I think Delta Work is an each way chance, although he would be looking to repeat the feat of Amberley House by making it third time lucky. So that's a slight negative. And I think there's a few down at the bottom that could run really well. Actually, there's a bit of dross kind of in the middle of the weights, and there's a few down the bottom. Obviously, as I mentioned, I'd love to see Kitty's Light run well. Just a slight worry about the ground for him. But down at the bottom at number 31, Panda Boy there for JJ Slevin and Martin Brazel. Again, 8 years of age, fourth behind Maxim in a hurdle last time out. So just a good, a real just a pipe opener really at Leopardstown last time out. He's had the 70-day break. He's probably been given a schooling race in the interim. Second behind Meeting of the Waters before that. He's only actually gone up £4, so his handicap mark has been really nicely protected. Panda Boy. Look, I'm not sure if he's truly good enough, but at 10 stone 7, you have to think that there's horses down there at the bottom, like a similar story, someone like Galia de la Tow, who's a sort of 28-1 shot. I think she could run a big race as well down at the bottom. But like I say, wouldn't be surprised if quite a few of these pull up in these testing conditions. But Iron Maximus is the main man for me.
Okay. And again, for those who follow jockeys, JJ Slevin's been in good form. Went well at Ferryhouse, was brilliant on our preview ahead of Cheltenham when we did our live pod for the Racing Pod as well. So that is it for the first Racing Pod of this week. If you want a load more detail from Tom, we're going to go horse by horse for the field for the Aintree Grand National. We're going to take a look at the Grade 1s on Saturday as well. You can sign up offtheball.com/join for all the details if you want to get the members pod. But for Tom, for now, thanks a million.